Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share this program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, if you haven't already done so, please make it a point to follow us on Facebook, and make sure you click the notification button so that you can get the notifications as soon as we go live. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please help us to expand our base by, making sure we have a bigger audience. Finally, also want to encourage you guys, please visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. There you'll find all sorts of cool pro Second Amendment stuff, T-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, all sorts of stuff to help show your outward support for the Second Amendment while you're actually supporting the Second Amendment. Because every dollar that you spend there goes right back in the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right. Being here in the state of California, it is interesting that when I think about all of the legislation, all of the laws, all of the Second Amendment infringements that we have to deal with here, sometimes I wonder what else can they possibly come up with? And it never ceases to amaze me the level of creativity that the anti-gun community comes up with. Now, they realize that since Heller and since McDonald, they realize that they can't just flat out and outright ban all firearms, although the state of Hawaii is, I think, attempting to do that by repealing the Second Amendment, by attempting to repeal the Second Amendment. But what gets me is that now what they're doing is they're starting to now attack the Second Amendment from around the fringes. And one of those fringes has to do with the right to be able to sell firearms. In many cases, in many municipalities, what they're doing is they're zoning out areas, or they're creating areas making it impossible for you to be able to place a gun store in particular areas. Or I'll give you an example. In the case of Alameda County here in the state of California, in the unincorporated county, there is not one place in the entire unincorporated county where you can legally put a gun store. In the city of San Francisco, in the county of San Francisco, there are no gun stores. So one of the things that they have there now is they have gun shows. Well, now there seems to be this effort to go after gun shows to make sure that they are not able to for the first step, they want to make sure that they don't exist at all. But their first step is to make sure that they don't exist on government-owned properties. One such property is the Del Mar Fairgrounds in San Diego County. And there's a piece of legislation that is being pushed right now that would actually ban gun shows. It started off from just Del Mar. Now it's been expanded to include any state property. So I wanted to have on the show a good friend of the show. You guys all know him, Mr. Michael Schwartz. He's from San Diego County Gun Owners, and I wanted to talk with him a little bit about kind of how this whole movement at the Del Mar Fairgrounds got started, and then kind of where things are at right now. So, Mike, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate having me on to talk about this. I think it's extremely important.
Right. Now, okay, so this wasn't just some out-of-the-blue, willy-nilly thing that came up. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the history of Del Mar Fairgrounds and gun shows there and the opposition to such?
Sure. The gun show at Del Mar for Crossroads of the West has been going on for about 30 years, over 30 years, just over 30 years. And there were occasionally over the past decade or so that I've been going to the shows. There were occasionally, some people in the free speech zone that would protest, one or two people. But in about the last 2 or 3 years, that really picked up speed, and there were, 2 or 3 people turned into maybe about 24 people, and they were really focused on just getting rid of the gun show at Del Mar. They decided that they didn't like guns, and their reasoning kept changing. They kept, at first they were saying, oh, they're dangerous and people are breaking laws and buying machine guns there.
But
And then
by the way, if I can just interject, so have there ever been any convictions of people? I mean, that you know of any instances where someone's been arrested for illegally selling or purchasing firearms, or even committing a gun crime at or near the gun show?
So no, there really wasn't, and people were reporting on this and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, all the laws are being followed. You can't buy a machine gun at a parking lot at the Del Mar Gun Show. That's simply not true." And then they change tactics a little bit more and say, "Well, it's just not. It's not. It's a culture that we don't like, and kind of a think of the children argument." And but they really got shellacked a couple of times, including about a year ago, San Diego County gun owners, we had our $10,000 gun show challenge, where we basically had a press conference and we said, "Hey, look, if you can do what you always say can be done at a gun show, we'll donate $10,000 to your cause or whatever cause that you guys pick." Meaning, if you go to the gun show this weekend and buy a machine gun in a parking lot without a background check or whatever, do these ridiculous things that they said could be done, we'll donate $10,000. And it really shined a light. One of the leaders of the anti-gun show groups went on the news and said, "Oh, we never said that. We never said that." And then Breitbart actually showed that, yeah, not only has that been said, but she specifically said it a year earlier in the Union Tribune. So they really were getting shellacked. And so they finally, by the end of it, just said, "Hey, look, we just don't like it." And when at the 22nd Agricultural Board meetings, the 22nd Agricultural Board is the board that oversees the fairgrounds and decides,
Right.
who gets to use the venue. They basically, we had security, the head of their security come in and said, "Yeah, there really are no issues. This is a safe show. Everybody follows the law. Everything's really good to go." And they finally stood up and said, "Okay, look, we can see that they're following all the laws, that everything's safe. We just don't like it. It's just not good for our community." So basically they decided, hey, we want to use the force of government to kick people out of town who are undesirable, meaning gun owners.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say that, because we were talking a little bit even off the show. It's like, so in other words, you admit it's all legal. In fact, it's the constitutional right. So why don't we? So what if someone decided they wanted to write a law that would ban other stuff that people didn't like? Like, for example, the example that, well, why don't you share the example that you shared with me?
Well, so, they're talking about, they're trying to paint this picture that gun shows are unsafe. Meanwhile, there was a rap concert there just within the last year, and one of the attendees decided to shoot the place up. And so there was I forget the artist, but it was an artist that had particularly, and look, I don't care what goes on in music. I mean, it's entertainment, but it was particularly misogynist lyrics and violent lyrics. And somebody shows up, not at a gun show, but someone shows up at this concert and starts shooting the place up. So they can continue to have these types of concerts and, drinking fests and, concerts and that sort of thing. But somehow a safe, legal gun show is harming society. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's very hypocritical.
It is highly hypocritical, because once again, and dude, I love me some hip hop. I just tell you right now. But even with that, if you're saying that the goal, if there's someone out there, if the community out there doesn't like something, and that's all it comes down to, is they don't like it, therefore we should ban it.
Right. Right. And that's the important thing. When people ask, well, what's the issue? What are they mad? What happened? What are they mad about? There's overwhelming evidence that they just simply don't like the civil right that we're exercising. Todd Gloria is an assemblyman who kind of kicked this thing off. It's been passed over to another assembly member, but Todd Gloria was quoted saying, "Fundamentally, I believe that it is wrong for the state of California to profit or to benefit from the sale of firearms or ammunition." So he's not making the case that, hey, these things are unsafe, or that the people are abusing the property, or that people are skirting the laws or anything like that. He's quite simply saying, hey, this is somebody I find undesirable.
Well, then they can allow, then maybe what the bill should say is, if they don't want to profit, then they should allow them to utilize the space at cost.
Yeah.
Then the state would in fact not be profiting. But here's the other thing, and this is now let's talk about the flip side of what he's saying. So what he's also saying is the state should be opposed to and voice a public opposition to legal businesses at a legal event with law-abiding citizens who are doing nothing more than facilitating the exercising of a constitutionally enumerated right. What he's saying is he's opposed to that because he doesn't like that right.
Exactly. And, the other side has done a really good job of convincing people that if you're at a gun show, that somehow laws completely disappear. I was actually on KPBS and not too long ago, and one of their producers, who was a very smart lady, highly educated, and she did not believe me that background checks, for example, have to be processed when you buy a gun at the gun show in Del Mar. She absolutely didn't believe me. She was under the impression that if it's a gun show, then all of a sudden every law disappears and you can just do anything you want. So it's been really, really difficult to, because not only do we have to give our side of the story and say, hey, here's what we disagree with, but we have to take the time to educate the public, and kind of unbrainwash them, and explain to them, hey, look, these are dealers. Every transaction has to go through a dealer. They're going through a background check. Basically everything that, for example, the Brady organization has ever wanted,
they have to do. Well,
it happens at a gun show. So,
and some of the challenge that we have here in California is that when people hear about gun laws in general, they don't realize that, a lot of that stuff that you say you want already exists in California.
Right.
And so part of it is just educating that. The most frustrating thing is when you're dealing with both policymakers and the media who should know better. They know that this stuff exists, but what they do is they either conveniently don't mention it, they ignore it, or they are just willfully ignorant. In other words, you tell them the truth. They're like, no, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And I'm like, well, all you have to do is look it up. They're not interested in doing that because it doesn't fit their narrative.
It doesn't fit their narrative, and it doesn't fit their goal, which is no longer to inform, but to entertain.
Right. Well, exactly. And everybody's got to say, well, I've got my anti-gun bill. And it's sad because even in some cases you have Republicans who say, well, I have to have my gun violence. Well, they call it their bill to stop gun violence. My attitude is this: if you want to reduce gun violence, how about not letting criminals out on the street? If you want to reduce gun violence, how about letting law-abiding citizens exercise their constitutionally enumerated right to both keep and bear arms? How about that? But that doesn't seem to be a conversation they want to have.
No, you're absolutely right. And if there is a conversation about how to keep bad guys from doing bad things, let's have it. Let's have the conversation. We're ready to have that conversation, 365 days out of the year. But banning a gun show is not a part of that conversation. There's zero evidence that it's going to stop any kind of crime, that it's going to do anything other than discriminate against people who are exercising their First Amendment right to assemble and to speak, and exercising their Second Amendment right by keeping and bearing arms.
Exactamundo, because let's just be real. The more laws you pass, laws only apply to the law-abiding. And if someone's decided that they're going to commit a crime with a gun, I don't think they're going to be real concerned about following the law in order to obtain that gun. But I don't know. That just makes common sense to me.
It makes way too much sense.
Exactly.
So this bill started out as they just wanted to ban gun shows just at Del Mar. And then it started to expand, and they started talking about Cow Palace. And then Assembly member, her name's Borner Horvath, who represents a district here in kind of North Coast San Diego County. It looks like she's taking the lead, and she wants to ban gun shows on state property permanently everywhere across the state. Period. And that's where it stands. That's where the push is now. And I got to tell you, there's nothing reasonable about a 100% ban. No, there's nothing. There's nothing common sense or reasonable about 100% ban.
I'll tell you, Assemblyman Bill Quirk, when the Cow Palace bill came out, the bill to ban it from the Cow Palace, or allow the Cow Palace, that agricultural board, to decide if they wanted it or not. You know, his thing was this. He's like, look, if there's no place for people to be able to legally engage in transactions and be able to buy and sell firearms, if you don't have any place to legally do it, people will illegally do it. This is one of the most anti-gun members of the legislature. Even he understands,
Wow.
when you get rid of when you get a legal means for people to be able to exercise their rights, they're going to find illegal ways to do it. And it's when we talk about them making criminals out of law-abiding citizens, that's what we're talking about.
I made the point over and over and over again. You know, there are 5 shows a year, and I went there for like 11 years. I was working a booth doing volunteer work for the NRA and Gun Owners of California, and then eventually San Diego County Gun Owners. So every single show, 5 times a year for 10, 11 years, I was at the gun show, and every single weekend I saw multiple people learning, families learning, you know, being educated on the safe and proper use of firearms. And, you know, I made the point again and again and again while this was going on, if you truly want gun safety, if that's really your goal, then you want a gun show in your community 5 times a year.
Right.
You want people doing things legally and safely in your community 5 times a year, but that's not the goal.
Right, because we're not just talking about people. We're not just talking about people going there and buying firearms and ammunition. You're like you said. You're talking about there's workshops on safety training. There's workshops on understanding use of force law, understanding what you can legally and cannot legally do. I mean, there's so much that is there that is surrounded around that once again is about the safety that they say they want. They say they want safety, but if it's really about gun safety, well, then why not let people who actually know about guns teach about how to, handle, store, and utilize them safely?
It is, Craig. And, you know, you started out the segment here, the show, talking about how, that really wasn't the goal. The goal is they're kind of going through the back door trying to, stop your ability to buy. You know, I remember back in the early 90s when it was just okay to say, hey, we want to ban all handguns. You know, we want to ban all handguns. That was a perfectly okay plank in your political platform. And that proved to be extremely unpopular. So that kind of language, ceased. That doesn't mean the goal has changed. The goal is still to, basically, for all practical purposes, ban the use and ownership of firearms. So now they've moved on to these different tactics. Okay, well then we're just going to ban gun shows. We're just going to ban gun stores. We're going to ban ammunition.
And then there's the people that are in some cases, I believe, the well-meaning people who are like, well, but this is just one small, you can't really use the slippery slope argument. And I keep telling them, no, I completely agree that the slippery slope argument in most cases is not a logical defense, except that I know it to be true when it comes to guns, because like you said, this is not the end game. What they're doing here is not the end game. They want to get rid of it they'll work to get rid of it on all state property. Then they'll go after all government property, and then they'll just look to get rid of them altogether.
Well, and banning gun shows. I mean, that's pretty much what they've done. So a lot of people ask, well, gee, how come you don't just have it on private land somewhere? We need a gun show. Crossroads of the West needs 50, 60,000 square feet of usable space, and they need 1,200 parking spots. If you look across the county, the venue that fits that is Del Mar. It's the fairgrounds. That's exactly what it was designed to do. So trying to find another venue is near impossible, and that's not a coincidence. That's by design.
Exactly. Hey, before we go, let folks know a little bit more about San Diego County Gun Owners and how they can get a hold of you and follow the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. So San Diego County Gun Owners, we're a political organization. We focus just on the Second Amendment and just here in San Diego County, especially at the city council and county level. So that would be the school boards and city councils and mayors and sheriffs. So we organize the Second Amendment community. We do fundraising to support candidates to make sure that the right folks get elected early in their political career on these city councils, so that eventually they'll serve in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. So great guys like Craig will have have an easier time working with pro Second Amendment folks who've moved up through the ranks. But that's exactly what we do, and we're real proud of the job that we've done in the last 3.5 years.
Well, you guys have done a phenomenal job. And, like I said, you guys are the example. When I start, I keep getting people say, well, why does an FPC do this? Or why does an FPC do that? Or why is it? You know what? Here's the thing. If there's a niche, if there's a need that you see needs to be filled, step up. I don't see, for example, I don't see us in San Diego gun owners. We're not competition.
Not at all.
We work hand in hand. We're fighting the same battle on different fronts.
Yep. You guys are doing a great job in all the advocacy work that you guys do in Sacramento, and the lawsuits that you guys do are fantastic. And we're so proud to partner with you guys when we're able to. And then our thing that we do, our little niche, is that we organize the grassroots and try to get local guys elected. And if everyone plays their position on the field, man, I think we have a bright future ahead of us.
I completely agree. Could not agree more. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Craig. I appreciate you having me.
All right, sir. All right, folks. Well, hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing these videos in this program, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition, because as I love to say, we are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.